Okay, now we've got it.
Well done.
Victory. Okay, thanks. So I'll just mute you all and we'll start on with our presentation. So this presentation is about balance, and it's actually the background to the Stay Standing program. You've probably never heard of that one, but these are the topics in the Stay Standing presentation. So we have some core best practice falls prevention topics, and this program is one of many quite good ones. I must say they're good. I wrote this one, so I like it. And we've based it on the falls prevention evidence base. And that includes other programs that are based on that evidence, include the Otago exercise program and Stepping On, things you've probably, other programs that are a bit more famous. So in our core topics, usually we have a group face-to-face, but today we are Zooming, and it's so great to be here with you with this wonderful technology to be able to do that. So in our first session, we usually test our participants' falls risk. Now, we could go ahead and try that at home, but I think first we'll cover the material. If we have time, we might do a very safe falls risk test. Now, today's core topic is about balance. Our other core topics are independent and supported aging at home, vision, healthy bones, feet and footwear, managing medication, and we also throw in an introduction to Tai Chi. So we also have some extension topics. We include goal setting. We look at older adult health emergencies. So that's what to do in the first 15 minutes when you're waiting for an ambulance, really. We found that the managing urinary continence topic is really popular and gives us an opportunity to ask questions and find out things we've never had the courage to ask our health practitioner. Older adult nutrition is up there as well as managing chronic pain and sleep. But we're on balance today, and this topic is going to consider what balance is, how we lose it, and how we can maintain it and preserve it. So the health professional definition of balance is the ability to keep the centre of mass over the base of support while we're at rest or while moving. And your base of support just means anything that's any part of you that is in contact with something else. And that could include a walking aid, it could be the table you're leaning on, it could be anything like that, as long as it's keeping you supported. That's part of your base of support. So we need balance for independence. It's just a fact that if you want to be independent, you need to be able to move safely, however that may be, whether it's with a walking aid or without. And without safe mobility, we lose our independence. And moving safely is what allows us to keep enjoying the things that we enjoy in life. So let's think about this. I want to present this topic with a frame of reference of what is it that you love to do, because I don't believe that I can just tell you to do X amount of exercises a day, you know, and expect you to do that. There has to be a deep connection that is meaningful for you and what you really love to do in your life, and that will drive you, that will motivate you. And I think that also gives you the respect of being an adult and growing and learning in this experience. So, you know, let's just frame it from that point of view. What do you love to do? And think about how balance and having safe mobility can help you do those things. So let's think about how balance works. We have three key organs of balance, and the body's organs of balance send information to the brain through the nervous system. So the nervous system is like an electrical wiring circuit, and the brain is the commander, and it interprets the signals that are coming from the nervous system and the outside world, and it commands the muscles to change length and tension to keep our body balanced. And it's a very rapid process. So our important organs of balance include our eyes, our inner ear, and our joint and muscle receptors. And we'll look at each of these individually and how they contribute to keeping our balance, informing our brain about our balance and our position in space. So the eye. Here is a cartoon of the eye. It's just a circle with a few little words on it telling you what some key structures are. So at the front of the eye, we have a lens, and the lens changes length and adjusts our focus so we can see at different distances. We also have at the back of the eye, if you can imagine, like a projector screen at the back of your eye, and there's some specialized cells on that screen called rods and cones. And you've probably heard of those in relation to television, or the old TVs used to have rods and cones. And the rods in our eye are what are responsible for black and white and contrast, and the cones are specialized for color. So that's at the back of our eye. And what happens, the light waves move through from the sun, they bounce off objects in our environment, bounce into our eye, move through all the material that's in our eye, and they connect with those sensors, those sensory cells at the back of our eye, and that causes a chemical and then an electrical reaction. It's quite amazing, isn't it? So you can, you know, when your rods and cones are working well, the chemicals send the electrical signal down the optic nerve to different parts of your brain that are responsible for vision. Now, you might know, well, you might be interested to know that our optical center in our brain is at the back, mostly at the back of our skull. And that's why people who have a fall, and even if their actual eye may not be injured, if they hit the back of their head, they can have visual problems. So that's just a little interesting fact. So that's something about the eye. The eye is a very primitive organ. It's one of the first organs that are formed in our body when we're developing in our mother's womb. And that it's a very primal organ. Now let's think of the inner ear. Here's our second key organ of balance. The inner ear forms part of the vestibular system. So we have on the screen a diagram of an ear, and we're having a cross section here. We're going in through the ear canal, we're going past the eardrum, past those three smallest bones of the body, and that's the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup for those who remember their anatomy. And then we have this thing called a vestibulocochlear system. So we've got a series of hollow tubes, really, and they're connected very closely to the brain. So we've got one on each side, one of these organs on each side of our head. And they kind of look like a snail or almost like a squid if you have a look at them. But they're a little series of hollow tubes. And inside those tubes are little fine hairs that line the tubes, and also some fluid. Now, we have problems when crystals get formed, or little otoliths, and they go into the wrong tubes, and they can press on those fine hairs and make us feel like we're actually not upright when we are. And we call that vertigo. And you might have heard of that. You may know people who've had vertigo, or and there are treatments for that, by the way. But anyway, the vestibular system, those little tubes are angled in, they have three little tubes called semicircular ducts, and they're angled really cleverly so that every angle of movement can be communicated to the brain. And even when we're not moving, the effect of gravity on that fluid in the tubes can still give us a sensation of movement, such as when we're in an elevator going up and down, or when we're in a car and we put the brakes on. Even if our body is not really moving, we can still feel the effect of gravity telling us about our movement. So isn't that fascinating? That's one of our other key organs of balance. Now, the third key organ of balance that we'll talk about are our receptors in our joints and muscles. So we'll particularly think of our leg muscles, and we have joint and muscle sensory receptors there. And you can see that in this picture, we've got a picture of a brain, we've got a pathway down our nervous system, leading all the way down to our foot and our ankle. And we've got some little dots there symbolizing the proprioceptors. Don't worry about the big words, just know that there's some sensory organs in the joints and muscles. And when we move, they send signals to the brain and tell us where we are, where our body position is in space. So when you combine all those three things, we've got remember, we've got our eyes, our inner ear, and our little sensory receptors in our joints and muscles. And all those things combine, send messages very quickly to our brain, and then the brain sends the messages back to the muscles to change length and tension so that we stay upright and balanced. So that's basically how it works. And that all happens very quickly. Now, one of the key things about balance is that gravity is a big influence. So all those organs, when you think about it, the eyes see things, we get visual cues, unconscious visual cues to tell us which way is up, whether it's the alignment of the building we're in, whether it's the way the trees are growing up tall, you know, we know which way is up through our eyes. Now, if you don't have visual input, then apparently I've heard that your vestibular and other organs of balance become really well developed. So the inner ear, you know, like I said before, the effect of gravity on that fluid in the inner ear tells us where we are with respect to gravity and our position in space, and those sensory endings in our joints and muscle receptors. So gravity is the big influence. So just remember that, just tuck that fact away, because I'm going to come back to that when we talk about exercise. Now, gravity influences how the brain interprets the signals from the body's organs of balance. That's what this slide says. So it's important for balance training. So this is one of the key principles of balance training. We're going to get into those key principles. One of the key principles is to train your balance in the presence of gravity. It's more effective. Okay, now there are some age-related changes that occur as a normal part of healthy aging. And some changes are not normal, and these are related to disease processes. So we're just going to basically consider some of the normal age-related changes. I'd like to talk about the body's production of certain tissue proteins. Now, our body is made of proteins, basically. All the stuff that we walk around in, this body is comprised of water and proteins and various other sort of things like fats and things. So our body's tissue proteins, they include things like collagen, elastin. You've heard of these terms. You've probably heard of collagen in beauty product claims, you know, to help preserve the amount of collagen in our skin. Well, you know, it's a normal age-related change for the tissue proteins to decline in production by 2 to 3% each year after the age of 25. So I don't know how old you are, but I'm in my 50s, and I certainly have a few lines under my eyes and laugh lines that, you know, I'm not so worried about that, because I know that's a normal age-related change. And so by 2 to 3% decline of those proteins after the age of, or per year after the age of 25, you can imagine how that affects every part of your body. The things we notice are probably the wrinkles on our face, but this is occurring all over the body. So it also affects most body tissues like your eyes, your muscles, and your joints. And this can lead to changes in muscle strength and so on. We'll consider that soon. Anyway, one of the most obvious things for sighted people is when you get to your 40s, or around about the age of 45, we start to need reading glasses. I know I did. So there you go. Normal age-related changes include increasing visual deficit. We may have slowing of reaction time and decreasing muscle strength. And this is because our muscles get smaller and fewer cells. And, you know, these things combine to increase our risk of falling as we get older. But the good news is that our risk can be managed. So let's have a look at why people fall. So apart from that normal aging process, falls are usually due to the interaction of risk factors, and falls risk factors increase with age and in the presence of chronic disease. Just as an aside, the top 5 contributors to developing chronic disease, did you know, are the use of tobacco, high body mass, excessive use of alcohol, physical inactivity, and high blood pressure. So these are the top 5 contributors to be aware of. And a lot of those are lifestyle related, so we can actually make decisions around those to prevent chronic disease or manage it better. Okay, this graph, I've put a graph up here. It's from a test they did from a journal article where they asked people of all ages to stand on one foot. They had one trial with their eyes open and one trial with their eyes closed. So they broke them up into age groups they had the age group, say, from 18 to 39, all the way through to 80 to 99. So what they saw was when people stood on one leg and had their eyes open, of course, the younger people could stand on one leg for longer with their eyes open. And that was the case with their eyes shut as well. But when people in all age groups shut their eyes, the amount of time they could stand on one leg was dramatically reduced. Now, we can learn a lot from this graph. If you can't see the graph, I'll just describe it to you. We get sort of a plateau of a line up to the age of about 50, 59 age group, and then it just dives down like a slippery dip in terms of time that people could stand on one leg. So by the time people are getting to the age of 60 to 69, there's a sharp decrease in the amount of time people can stand on one leg with their eyes open and with their eyes shut. All age groups could only stand for much less time with their eyes shut. So two big learning lessons from this graph are: the younger you are, the longer you can stand on one leg with your eyes open. And that age the age that it seems to markedly decline is around 50 to 60. And the second big learning is that when you shut your eyes, everyone's time they could stand on one leg goes down markedly, but especially when you're at that 50 to 60 age group as well, and from then on in age. So that's just an aside. Now I've got another graph here. It's called falls-related hospital admissions. This one's taken from Australian admissions 2011 to 2012, but it's pretty much the same each year. And what it shows, a number of cases admitted to hospital because of falls. Now, we've got the age groups divided up here, 0 to 4 and so forth, all the way up to 65 plus. And what you see on this graph is, so by the time we're at 45 to 64, we've got about 30,000 admissions per year. By the time we get to 65 plus, we've got 100,000. So this is consistent every year. And yeah, it just shows that it's probably physiological, normal age-related changes that are contributing to that, as well as the development of chronic disease. So there's a background for you. We've got another slide here that shows a big tidal wave, and the headline says silver tsunami. So this is a little bit of an unkind term that's been coined around the world because we have an aging population. You may know that there's more and more people living longer and longer. Many of them are living with chronic disease, but for a longer time. And they're calling it a silver tsunami, silver hair tsunami, like a big tidal wave, because it's going to impact our health system in a big way. So governments know this, and this is why we need to prevent falls, because our hospital system is going to be overwhelmed unless people take some responsibility, or else they learn how to manage their own risk of falling. And we need to help people do that. So our falls risk factors we can roughly think of as being inside the person and outside the person. So factors that are inside the person include our age. So we know that as we get older, we're more likely to fall. Our level of cognition, so the poorer the cognition, the more likely. Chronic disease, if you've got chronic disease, you're more likely. Gender. Now, if you're a female, you're more likely to fall. And we can speculate as to why that is. That could be because females traditionally in this age group may not have exercised as much as males, either for leisure or through their work. We don't know really, we can just speculate. Now, there are also risk factors that we can manage that are inside ourselves. So that can be our balance, our strength, and our coordination. Now, balance, strength, and coordination are good news because we can do things about those that actually improve them no matter what age you are. The other things we can't so much change. We can't change our age, and not particularly chronic disease, cognition, or even, most of us don't change our gender. So let's think of some internal risk factors. We've just talked about this. Also medications. So the number of medications you're on per day affects your risk of falling, and people who are on 4 or more medications per day are at a much higher risk of falling, and it increases with the additional medication. And we're going to cover that in one of our sessions. We will cover managing medication. So you will learn a lot in that session about medication management. Today we'll just touch on it. One of the other things here So we've covered advancing age, female gender, living alone. Living alone is a risk factor for falling. It increases your risk of falling. So in our staying independent at home topic, we're going to cover some ways you can stay safe at home, even if you live alone. So that's going to be our next week, next Friday, 10:30 a.m. session. So tune in. Okay, whether you've had previous falls, this is also a predictor for more falls. And of course, we've talked about psychological or cognitive change. So psychological change just means low mood. Depression is also an increased risk of falling. And let's think of falls risk factors outside the person. So we're thinking of things in our environment, and that may be the level of lighting, the colours in our environment, you know, whether they're dark or light, our surfaces that we walk on, whether we've got a slippery surface or we've got rugs that curl up that we trip on. We've talked about medications. Use of assistive aids are contributing to your falls risk. So, and that just means if you need to wear a hearing aid and you don't wear one, then that is going to increase your risk of falling. And if you need a walking aid and you don't use one, then that will, just by omission, will increase your risk of falling. Also the placement of our furniture and things like that in our environment. And the good news is these are things that can all be easily adjusted to reduce our risk of falling. So that is fantastic news. Okay, let's move on. So we're going to talk more about these risk factors, our external falls risk factors, such as walking aids, flooring surfaces, obstacles and lighting, and assistive aids and devices next week, next Friday. So tune in. And we also today want to cover the principles of effective balance training. So just remember when I was talking before about the eyes, the inner ears, and the joint proprioceptors. And these are our key organs of balance. So we want to engage those in our effective balance training. We also need to think about the presence of gravity as part of our effective balance training. So let's think about this more. Exercise is great. We know that physical activity keeps us healthy and it improves all aspects of our life, but not all kinds of exercise actually improve balance. So I often have the question, oh, you know, I do hydrotherapy or I go walking every day. Why isn't that enough? Well, the scientific evidence base for balance doesn't support that. It doesn't show that walking programs actually improve your balance. It doesn't show that hydrotherapy or swimming improves your balance. Or just strength training by itself does not train your balance to reduce your risk of falling. The things that actually work, drum roll. Okay, here is the key slide in this presentation. So if you've been drifting off, pay attention. The principles of effective balance training are to train balance in the standing position in the presence of gravity, because that's what influence your organs of balance. Remember, the eyes, the inner ear, and the joint proprioceptors and muscle proprioceptors are all influenced by gravity. So that's why they say train your balance in the standing position. So you're getting all those cues from gravity. The brain is able to interpret the signals in the presence of gravity. So preferably train your balance in standing. Safely reduce your base of support. Remember I said at the beginning of the presentation, your base of support is anything that you're in contact with that is supporting you and keeping you upright. So it can be a walking aid, it can be your 2 feet, it can be the table you're leaning on. So if you safely reduce your base of support, that means you're not going to fall over when you train your balance. So have something next to you that you can lean on with your full weight. It could be your kitchen bench. And if you join us on Mondays and Wednesdays at 10:30 a.m., we will be training gentle strength and balance exercises, probably a lot of the time from my kitchen, and it'll probably look a lot like your kitchen. So join us and you can get some tips for training. We've already got a lot of video presentations up there if you want to catch up. So we're doing that until the end of June, every Monday and Wednesday. And we're going to have our strength and balance training with me, Monique, the physio. So Fridays, we're going to be doing another session of this falls prevention presentation. Next week, it'll be independence at home. Okay, so back to this second principle. Safely reduce your base of support. And that just means bringing your feet closer together, or maybe you're going on one leg, or maybe you're just going to use less hand support. Maybe you're going to have a fingertip on your kitchen bench. Maybe it means putting 2 hands above the handrail. but always make sure that you're safe. Now, the third principle of effective balance training is to safely practice your controlled movements of reaching and leaning over your base of support. So think of this. Think of your 2 feet on the floor, and you're reaching and leaning just outside of your 2 feet, out of that area of your 2 feet. And the heaviest part of your body is like an invisible sort of space. The heaviest part of your body might be around your abdomen. You're just sort of bringing that over your feet, just a little bit outside of where your feet are. So that is practicing, challenging your balance. And just if you do it that way, you should reach and lean just outside of your feet in a controlled way, in a very safe environment. So make sure you've got your handrail, your kitchen bench, your chair that you can hold onto if you need to. So those are the 3 key principles of effective balance training. I'll just go through those again. Train your balance in the standing position, safely reduce your base of support, and safely practice your controlled movements of reaching and leaning over your base of support. Now, there is one more key principle, and this sometimes doesn't go down well with people, and that is that the evidence base, the scientific research, supports up to 3 hours a week for at least 6 months or more of training for balance training. So it's effective if you train for around 2 to 3 hours a week for at least 6 months. Then you'll start to get your balance gains. A lot of people get them before that, but in general, I mean, really, we ought to be doing it every day for the rest of our lives, just to maintain that sense of balance. It's not something you can do all in 3 hours for one day. It's best to do it over the course of the week. That's about 10 to 15 minutes twice a day. And I like to influence people to put some balance activities into your everyday activities. So whether it's unstacking the dishwasher, or standing on one leg cleaning your teeth, or reaching and leaning while you're putting things away in the cupboard, just make it safe. Make sure you're safe, of course, and try and get that 2 to 3 hours per week, which equates to 15 minutes twice a day. Now, we do have a couple more slides, and I'm going a little bit fast at the moment because I know that we're over time. So I wanted to give you a chance to ask some questions as well. So our key messages are: we have our balanced sensory systems, our vision, our vestibular system, and our proprioceptive system. They're our eyes, our inner ears, and our skin, muscle, and joint receptors that all feed back messages to our control center, to the brain. There are age-related and other changes that may increase our risk of falling, but our falls risk can be managed. We've also learned that not all kinds of exercise will improve balance, although exercise is fantastic. I'm not putting down hydrotherapy or walking. They're great exercises, but the evidence just isn't there that they'll improve balance. They're great for other things, for your heart, your lungs, for reducing pain and increasing range, but just not balance. Okay, effective balance training helps us to stay independent so we don't have a fall. Therefore, we can keep doing what we love as an independent older adult. So that is what I want you to remember. When we start talking about exercise, it's not going to be me cracking the whip. It's you thinking about what you love to do in your life and how those funny little exercises, 15 minutes twice a day or 5 minutes here and there, will actually maintain your ability to do that. So I'm going to turn it over to you now.